Hi all, this is Kirti here, and I have 15.5 years of experience, the overall experience across various domains and different development life cycles. And currently I'm following the passion of working as a Scrum Master. And if you have not seen me on CareersTalk, I would like to thank Sunand again for giving an opportunity to present to you the topic of 10 most tricky release management questions, which can be asked in a Scrum Master. I have tried to build this as a tutorial as well, like along with the Scrum Master interview questions. It can also give you like step by step how release planning is done and what challenges can be faced. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first question is, what is the primary purpose of release planning in Scrum? So now the primary purpose of release planning in Scrum is not to fix the scope or the schedule, right? It is basically to create a shared understanding among the team and the stakeholders about what will be delivered and in what sequence. While the project progresses, we still do have the flexibility to adapt to what is much known. So we live in a complex world, in a dynamic world where things do keep changing. So fixing the sprint, doing the detailed level of release plan does not put a mark that nothing can be changed. So that is the first thing, that the goal of a release planning in Scrum is to create a shared understanding and not force the teams to commit to something which they might not be able to do, right? So that is the first thing, that so that the stakeholders, the POs, the sponsors, the teams, they all understand that what is going to be released or put in the production, or what is there for the customers to start using by the end of the release. Now, release planning can be a month, 3 months, a quarter. Usually in product-based companies, it's a quarter. But as in more agile we are getting, and more modern tech stack, the teams are also doing monthly release planning in a lot of environments, and that is working best for them. So that was the basically goal of the release plan. Now, once we start the release plan, what is the prerequisite for a release plan? Sorry, I have a bad cough, so sorry for that. So the data needed for the release planning is an ordered product backlog. So let me give an example. So let's say suppose we have a very complex and a big environment where multiple POs are there, multiple Scrum teams are there. So in the release plan, each product, each engine brings in their priority. Like, these are my priority epics, which we want to be done at the end of this quarter. And such kind of priority comes across all the engines. And once that is prioritized based on the product vision and the product goal, we get to see which all epics can be done based on the team velocity. Now, when I say the team velocity, it is actually the most misused metric, I would like to say, in agile space. So it does not mean the productivity. Now, I'm not saying that the teams who have committed less would be taking less. That means they're less productive. No, each engine has a different environment, skill set, complexity, dependency. So based on that, the teams bring in there like the project manager or the person, the portfolio manager for that particular space, brings in the capacity. Like they say that for this engine, there are 6 teams where there is around roughly 35 points for each team. So the total capacity is this. And then the list of epics, which is the prioritized story map against each of the epics, is there, and all those priorities are then decided that which actually maps and which is of the higher priority to be consumed by this capacity, right? So this is what exactly is the prerequisite of a release plan. Moving on to the next question: how do you create a release plan if this is entirely a new team, right? So you would be having that question. In my previous question, I mentioned that the capacity or the velocity of the team should be known if we are doing the release planning. Now, Since this is a new team, the velocity would not be known. Fair enough. But if this is a team which has been working with each other from, the previous project, and they have moved to a new project, and they have been working with each other from quite some time, the same velocity, what was being considered for the previous project, more or less can be considered for this project as well. The reason being is that they have already crossed the stages of forming a good team. They already have trust in each other. They know if they are stuck in some technical issue, who is going to help them. They know their strengths, they know their areas of improvement. So it is more or less the same velocity which can be considered, right? They know, they are very much aware of their style of working. But if they have never worked together, right, then what should be done? So ideally, what I do, particularly in my teams where they move to a new project, I just don't suggest to spend too much time on the planning. Based on your guesstimate or the gut feeling of the team, how much can be taken? Should we take spikes? Should we take make the epics ready, understand what needs to be done, and based on that, some high level estimate we can do. If that is not that's not convenient for your engines or teams, and where there is very specific planning is needed, what we can do is there is still a way to go ahead and do a detailed level of planning. What we do is we calculate the ideal capacity in hours. Let's say, suppose you have 8 members in your team, and so around 6 story points per person we can consider, like 6 hours in a day, right? 6 hours in a day. Sorry, it's not story points. It's 6 hours in a day because 2 hours we store for meetings or anything like those things. So 8 into 6, and then let's say, suppose there are 8 sprints. Just giving an example. So there are around 288 hours. That is the ideal working capacity, right? Now estimate the stories at high level with relative sizing. Like put the story points. Let's say, suppose there are 3 stories and we have 5, 5, and 8. Let's say, suppose. Okay. Now break down these stories to tasks like coding, automation, testing, or any other definition of done which needs to be done to make the story complete. Now keep adding the hours for each of the stories which you break down till we reach the capacity of 288. So what happens is the story points associated with those stories then becomes your velocity. So let's say, suppose there were 3 stories which I had mentioned earlier, 5, 5, and 8. And when you do the breakdown, you already reach the capacity of 288 with their detailed level of task. Then your velocity of the teams becomes 18. So this is just a rough estimate. And this is not the final thing which your team has to abide with. It is just a starting point so that we get some estimate, like where, when, and how we can get the work done. So the story points associated with those planned story becomes the velocity. Now, this is the best case because we have calculated the entire capacity. So just based on the ambiguity, based on the clarity, and based on the your project complexity, you can actually reduce the velocity by 20 to 30%, which gives you the actual velocity which can be planned in the release, because there can be leaves, there can be lot many things, right? So and like I mentioned, this is just a guideline and should not be considered as the baseline for all the future releases. So once the release gets done and we actually get to see what velocity we are achieving based on trial and error, the next release planning will get better and better, right? So this is how we create a release plan if the team is new and the velocity was not known earlier. So moving on to our third question, which is, sorry, fourth question, which is how to calculate how many sprints the work can be done. So now I have worked on both the spaces where there is kind of a fixed scope where the users or the customers do a detailed brainstorming and come up with a fixed scope, which is mostly in the service-based organizations where we say, this is what is the scope, and now you tell me by when it can be delivered. So to calculate the number of sprints in where it can be delivered is basically the total number of story points, what we have calculated in your user map when you did the user mapping for that fixed scope, and divided by the velocity, like the total story points of all the stories divided by the velocity. So that gives you the number of sprints. So let's say, suppose the total story points were around 100 and your velocity is 20, so it will take 5 sprints. So based on whenever you start your release plan, till the next 5 sprint, considering it's a 2-week sprint, so the next 2.5 months you should be done with your the particular scope which for which the release planning is being done. Right now, in most of the product based companies, it's basically a monthly release or a quarterly release which is going to happen, and then they do what scope will be delivered as part of that particular release. So for that, you need to first calculate the total number of story points which will be needed. So the total number of sprints, so let's say, suppose there are 5 sprints and velocity of each sprint is 20, so it is total number of story points which can be delivered is 100, right? So the number of sprints, like I said, was 5. So so in 2.5 months, this is the scope of the work which can be delivered on this date, is how we calculate how many sprints the work can be done in, right? So moving on to the next question, which is, how can a release plan be changed when it's created? Or can a release plan be changed, right? So now this is a trick question, and many a times the Scrum Master falls in the trap and say, no, once it is committed, it's committed and it cannot be changed. But the answer is, and it's a myth, that yes, a release plan can and often should be changed based on the new information, feedback, or shifting priorities. The key is to maintain flexibility and adaptability throughout the project. So I'll just give an example quickly, that let's say, suppose in my one of the organizations, we were working on a customer need which we were in the middle of the release, right? And then we came to know that that customer is gone, there was some issue or there was some contract breaches. So what do you think should be done? Should we keep continuing producing waste? No, that is not right, right? So it can be changed. So this is one of the example, but there can be many other reasons. There might be the compliance which we are following is no more needed, or the customer itself shifts the goal and they said that this is the newer priority which needs to be done. So if we are agile, right, we should not say no, but we should keep prioritizing the things based on the teams, how much the team can commit based on their team's capacity or team's commitment, right? So the key is to maintain flexibility and adaptability throughout the project. In Scrum, like, this question arises a lot many times. Like, there is a tech team, there is a product team, then there is a senior management team. Now the senior management team is trying to woo in some customer who needs some feature. Now suddenly that becomes a priority, because otherwise we'll not be able to get that customer, right? So so that becomes but the feature which the team existing is building, the customer is in no hurry, the existing one is in no hurry. So the other things becomes the priority, right? So so this kind of real life scenarios and situations keeps coming. Those Scrum says that there will be just one PO. And the reason why one PO is suggested is to have no conflicting priorities. But in large organizations, like the examples I've given, these things keep on coming, right? So we need to be agile and we need to keep evaluating of what is the biggest priority, what will get disrupted, what risk and challenges we are facing. So these information are the key information radiators, which you have to keep coming up and telling the stakeholders, the sponsors and the product and the team, and be very, very transparent across all engines, right? So during release planning, if there are conflicting priorities, it should be openly discussed with the teams, the stakeholders, to understand the reasoning behind each priority. The goal is to reach a consensus or compromise that aligns with the project's objectives and delivers the most value, right? So moving on, the next question is it necessary to estimate every story before release planning? No. it is not, because it is very much that there should just be a rough estimate of something which needs to be, which gives an idea of when and how this can be done, like by when this can be done. It is just a guideline, like I mentioned in my earlier discussions, that it is just a guideline and creates a shared understanding. So not everything needs to be estimated, but at least the story mapping should be done for the MVP, which gives us the clear picture to deliver an MVP, because that will be the minimal viable product which can be usable. So what exactly can be estimated so that we can have a goal, right? So next is, how do you ensure that release plan is realistic and achievable, right? So the challenge is that once the release plan is done, how realistic it is. Is it actually burning down the teams? Is it actually compromising on any kind of quality? And how do you keep that information very much relevant across, right? So ensuring the release plan is realistic and achievable involves regular communication and collaboration with your team and stakeholders, considering factors like team capacity, dependencies, and potential risk. So, in my, like when I had joined the organization, what I felt was there was too many teams working in too many silos, right? But but even if the team capacity was changing, or there were dependencies or potential risks, it was called out very, very late in the cycle, just like very close to the release. So what created a very negative environment, as if the teams are not working, as if there's no communication flow. So that was the silo which I tried to break as a SM, and here the SMs can play a very important role. So that is one thing which we can do, the regular communication across all pillars. And it is also important to iterate on the plan on new, as new information emerges. Like the example I gave is about the new merchant which is coming in, but the existing work can wait. So what can we do about it, right? And adjust the expectations accordingly. Once in a sprint, at least the product manager or the project manager should be engaged effectively, your stakeholders and sponsors. The sprint review is also a very good area where we discuss what we have done and what can be achieved in the upcoming sprint. But for a bigger discussion, like if in a release this can be done or not, this transparent discussion of the progress and calling out risk early and timely really, really is important, right? So many a times there can be a lot of scrutiny around what are the efforts which you all are consuming, right? So you can create kind of a burn down for that, like how much effort each sprint is going, so that you know whether there is no progress at all, is also a red flag that might be there are a lot of epics and the team is just flushed in between so many things to juggle and do. So that kind of a burn down really helps to understand whether in the next three sprints, if let's say suppose 24 points are left, then will you be able to achieve or not, right? Considering the upcoming holidays or the leave plans, or if you feel that whatever we have consumed till far has not achieved even the 50% of work which was planned to be done, then all those risks and things can be raised upfront. And this is not just the SM's main priority work, but it should actually be coming from the team and the SM as a whole. Together they can come and call out the risk and dependencies. So the next is, can a release plan be considered successful if all the features are delivered on time but don't meet customer expectations? So a release can't be considered successful solely based on the meeting deadlines. Success should be measured by delivering the value to the customer. If the feature don't meet customer expectation, the release may not be successful regardless of just meeting the deadlines. So timelines, quality, plus the value of the delivery, everything is important here, right? So the next question is it advisable to deliver more features even if the quality is hampered? So I covered a bit of it in the previous question, but sacrificing of quality is not at all advisable in Scrum. It's essential to maintain a balance between delivering value and ensuring quality. Prioritizing quality may sometimes mean that we are delivering less features, but it leads to greater customer satisfaction in the long run. So it is better to actually not compromise on the quality. Now, but in real life, we have been into many situations. Like in one of the projects, the ask was in 3 months we have to go live, right? So what we did, we just focused on building the MVP, the features, but it actually created a lot of tech debt, which we had to spend another 2 or 3 sprints just to, get it done. But the advantage, what I see is, at least the functional part was done, so we know the evaluation or the initial feedback which we had to get from the customer or from the stakeholders, we could get that and we could actually start building on it and refactor and everything. But this is not what actually Scrum prescribes and should not be done. So as an SM, what we can do is we can be transparent and bring data to the management if the teams do to just focus on the features. This is what is going to happen, and it's going to take more 2 sprints to just refactor. If from timeline perspective management is fine, still I would suggest that is not a best way possible. We can keep coaching them to actually have uh inclusive, I mean, focus more on quality as well as the feature delivery, right? But for a very, very initial project or a product where we need to seek initial feedback, I would still go ahead with it. And it's my personal opinion, but that I would still go ahead with it. And from priority perspective and from the feedback perspective. All right. So the next question is, how do you handle team members who underestimate their capacity during sprint planning, right? During the release planning, not sprint planning, sorry. So if the team members consistently underestimates the capacity, it's crucial to have an open discussion. Like you can have a one-on-one discussion. Now, since the SM and the teams have been working for quite some time, we get an understanding, or we can gauge what is happening, right? Like when I have faced such issues in my previous experience, it was mainly due to unclear requirements or unrealistic expectations. So once, or if there are, there are a lot of new members in the team. So there is no lack of, so there's lack of experience, and there's no clarity on what exactly the product is about. So they themselves are not confident enough to commit, right? So actually the adjustment should be done collaboratively to ensure more accurate capacity estimations in future release planning. But initially the teams should actually be taught and coached on how we can do it effectively. And also, if there are like unclear requirements for the reason, I usually take a step that I go ahead and talk to the product or the group of the products and say, because of this, teams are not able to take more, because during the past 2 releases with data, there has been 20% increase in the story points of due to unclear requirements or the additional requirements. So team has started storing that capacity so that they don't burn out every single release, right? So this way it was very collaborative, and it brought a lot of common understanding. And it was not intentional, but what the product thought was, since we are agile, we are very, very free to keep on adding requirements. Keep on adding requirements is fine, but I said that there's a time where the team would burn out and they will start reserving those capacity, which is happening now. So such kind of frank, transparent discussions really builds on and brings more value and brings transparency, right? So this is how we can handle. And coming out to the last question, how do you handle changes requested by stakeholders mid-release? So handling changes requested by stakeholders mid-release requires evaluating the impact on the current plan and considering the value of the change versus the disruption it may cause, and discussing it with the team, the product owner, and the stakeholders to make an informed decision. So let's say, suppose the product owner feels that, or the stakeholder feels that adding just this one more feature for the billing cycle or something will really make a huge difference. So what we do usually, we get on a call, we say that, okay, this is all what work is left. So can you prioritize any of it if this needs to be done on an urgent basis? And are we ready for it? So all those questions, and if they say, no, 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 we are not ready because there's a dependency on the API, the question is closed. But instead of just simply saying no, getting on a call and evaluating what is the current thing on the plate of the team and what can be deprioritized, and having that discussion brings a lot of healthy conversations on the table. But do ask questions, but asking right questions definitely make a lot of difference. So with this, we cover the entire scope of the sprint planning interview questions. But if you still feel there is any question which is not answered, please feel free to drop in your questions in the comment box and we'll definitely get back to you on this. So thank you very much for your time. Bye bye.